Hello, everyone. Today I want to talk to you about dry seasons. Fear not, dry seasons. And I want to start by telling you about my mother's oatmeal cookies. She used to make these for me, and now that she's no longer here, my aunts make these for me. And they're very nutritious and they are delicious, but they have all kinds of ingredients. Moist ingredients and dry ingredients and sweet and salty. But all of it together makes for these awesome oatmeal cookies. And have you noticed that life is like that too? We get all kinds of things. But the end result, that God is in charge, it's a wonderful thing. But it does have dry seasons and moist seasons and sweet seasons and not so sweet. And we need to trust that God knows what He's doing and that He will get us through the dry seasons. So today we're going to talk about, fear not, dry seasons. And for that, we're going to go to 1 Kings chapter 17. This is the prophet Elijah, and there is a big problem going on. There's a king Ahab who has done evil in the sight of the Lord. As a matter of fact, you can read in the previous chapter, 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 30 says, Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord, more than all who were before him. He actually led Israel into a very strong Baal worship. And I need to tell you a little bit about this before we start. Elijah is the one that is going to confront the king with this. And Elijah, the name means the Lord is God. Yahweh is God. Elijah. And Baal is supposed to be the Lord of rain and dew. So they always talked about this pagan god as the Lord of rain and dew. So the first thing that is going to happen is that God is going to target that to show them that Baal is not God at all. And chapter 17 of 1 Kings, verse 1, Elijah the Tishbite, who was at the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab, As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand, surely there shall be neither dew nor rain these years, except by my word. It's interesting that it mentions both, dew and rain, because Baal was supposed to be the god of dew and rain. And so he says there's going to be a drought until the word of the Lord comes back. And so we start wondering what's going to happen with the prophet Elijah. You know, he says there's not going to be any rain, but where is he going to go? Where is he going to hide from this king? How is he going to eat? Well, God is going to provide for him through the drought because the drought had a purpose. It had a greater purpose in the history of Israel. And it's interesting because when we go to verse 3, God gives the prophet the next step for him. It says, Go away from here and turn eastward and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. And it shall be that you will drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to provide for you there. God was in charge not just of the rain and of the brook and of the waters, but of all of nature. He was commanding the ravens to feed Elijah. And we are told here in verse 6 that the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening, and he would drink from the brook. And so he's being provided for. He's not going to die in this drought because God is with him and he's going to see him through it. And it's interesting because in verse 7 it says, But it happened after a while that the brook dried up. And so you say, well, but he was a prophet of God. He must have known everything that was going to happen, right? No, that's not the way God works. He gives you only the next step. He doesn't give you the whole map. So he says to Elijah, now you're going to go to the land of Sidon. Verse 9, I rise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and stay there. Behold, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you. Sidon, Tyre and Sidon, this is the territory where the evil Jezebel came from. Actually, her father was in charge in that territory, and they were all pagans, and they worship Baal. And God has chosen a widow over there, in that other side to provide for Elijah. Elijah gets there probably with some questions because, widows were not really rich. This must be a really rich widow. But no, he gets there, and if you continue reading, and I hope you read all of chapter 17, it's fascinating. He finds a widow there and says, please bring me a piece of bread in your hand. And she says, as the Lord your God lives, I have no bread, only a handful of flour in the bowl and a little oil in the jar. And I'm gathering a few sticks to prepare for me and my son, and then we will eat and die because we have no more. And Elijah says, no, God will provide. And here we get the do not fear, verse 13. Elijah said to her, do not fear. And then he says that God is going to do a miracle. Thus says the Lord God, verse 14, the bowl of flour shall not be exhausted, and the jar of oil will not be empty until the day that the Lord sends rain on the face of the earth. It's interesting because God was teaching the prophet that he would provide for them daily. And he provided for them for him daily at the brook, and now he provides for him and the widow and the son daily. It's interesting because God doesn't give us the map. I always wish that God would give me a map with all the seasons, the dry seasons, the moist seasons, the sweet, the salty, to see what the cookie of my life was going to look like. But God doesn't work like that. He gives you a map, and you open the map, and all you have is one spot that says, you're here, and this is your next step. And so he says to Elijah, go to the brook, and the ravens will feed you. And then he says, okay, now you go to this other place, Zarephath, and the widow will feed you. And then he kept doing this, right? He kept giving him only the next step, not the whole map, just one step at a time. And he does the same with us. And we can trust him in dry seasons, that he will give us the next step and the next step and the next step. So twice already, God has defeated death, because Elijah didn't die by the brook because he was fed by the ravens and drank from the brook. And now the widow and Elijah and the son of the widow also are not going to die because God will do a miracle, and they will have the little amount of flour and the little amount of oil every day because God will provide for them. And then the child of the widow died, and Elijah resurrected the child. This is all in just chapter 17, how God brought life and life and life when death was supposed to be around. And this is how he works. There is a greater purpose, and God makes all things work together for those who love him, for his redeeming purposes. That beautiful verse in Romans 8:28, all things work together for God's purposes, for those who love him. This story became an example that Jesus used in one of his sermons in Luke 4, showing how the grace of God is greater than we imagined. So remember this, only salvation was once and for all. Only salvation was done once and for all. Everything else is done daily. God gives us only the next step, and the next step. And he puts it all together to bring a greater purpose, a beautiful thing. So if you are in a dry season today, remember, fear not dry seasons. God will see you through.